Hello, everyone. We have people logging in, so we'll give them just a minute or two to get settled, and then we'll get started. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Link Center today for this shared learning group focused on the topic of sparking systems change and the importance of partnerships. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items while we get started. The session will be recorded, and the recording and the transcripts will be made available on our website. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with others. Attendees cannot see the names of other attendees, and all attendees are muted. Please do use the chat function in Zoom to communicate with other attendees and with the host during the webinar. You can use the chat by clicking on chat at the bottom of your screen. Be aware that your name will appear in the chat if you make a comment, and you can change your display name if you'd like to by clicking on those three dots next to your name and selecting rename. We will have representatives from the Link Center watching the chat and responding throughout the session today. If you'd like to submit a question or a comment privately to the host and panelists, you can do that by clicking on the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We have live captioning and ASL interpreters present today. We will be spotlighting the active speaker and the ASL interpreter throughout the webinar. If you click on View on your Zoom screen, you can change the way you see the panelists. And if you're having any trouble with your Zoom, please let us know in the Q&A and we'll try to help. At this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to Dr. Stacy Nonamaker, who will start today's presentation. Stacy, the floor is yours.
Hi there. Good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you're dialing in from. Thanks so much, Stephanie, for covering the housekeeping and the introduction. As Stephanie said, my name is Stacy Nonamaker, and by way of a visual description, I'm a middle-aged white woman with longer, wavy, brownish hair. I'm wearing glasses, a black cardigan, and I'm in front of a white background today. Thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to talk with you all today about sparking systems change, the importance of partnerships. Today's shared learning group is hosted by the Link Center, which I am a part of the National Association of State DD Directors, NASDs, and we are one of the primary partners of the Link Center. The Link Center is funded by the Administration for Community Living. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Link Center. We're not going to get into too much detail here today because we have a lot planned for you. But on your screen, there's a QR code. There's a link to our website. And what we like to say to people is check us out. Check back often. We have lots of information and resources on our website that we update continuously, all towards the mission of improving mental health access for people with disabilities. So that's just a quick introduction of who I am and who's hosting this shared learning group today. And we would love to hear from you all. And so if you could just take a moment, please introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know where you're dialing in from, who you are, as we're presenting and spending the next hour and a half with one another. So just a little bit about these shared learning groups. Quarterly, we host 4 meetings. We did 2 yesterday, one for direct support professionals, one for clinical professionals, and we're doing 2 today, one for people with lived experience and one for families of people with lived experience. So we encourage people to join whatever session really works for them, but we target the content and talking points of each of the presentations for the audience. So this audience is targeted for families of people with lived experience. Even though it's the same topic, a lot of the same content, across all four of the gatherings. The content and the presentation today really is a collaboration among the Link Center partners. You'll meet several of our partners throughout our time together today. And these are people who have lived experience, we're researchers, we're people who work on policy issues as well. As Stephanie said, and bears repeating, we will record and transcribe today's meeting. And that means we'll just write everything down, all the words that people say, and all of the materials, including the transcription, will be available after the meeting. And we encourage you all to share anything that we shared during the meeting and after the meeting far and wide with others that you think would find this information useful. So our goals today is that we're going to share with you all what we're doing at the Link Center related to systems change. Specifically, you're going to learn about the impact of storytelling and partnering with others who can influence systems change. We'll share some resources with you. Hopefully that will be helpful, and you can put those in your back pocket. And then we're going to spend some time doing a group exercise at the end, which we always do during our shared learning groups, to help us understand how you're thinking about this topic of sparking systems change. So the Link Center really is led by, and the work is guided by what we call our steering committee. It's a group of folks with lived experience, and they have helped us establish agreements of sorts, things that we like to share at the beginning of all of these gatherings to really stay on the same page. The first one is take care of yourself. Do what is necessary for your comfort and care during our time together. We should be gentle with ourselves and each other because this is hard work to do. We celebrate that we are all individuals from different backgrounds. We celebrate that we have shared experiences to learn from, and we know that we are each unique with our own experiences in this world. And finally, we listen and share with open minds and kindness, and we do not judge or blame others for what they shared. We want to create an environment and space where you all feel comfortable sharing your experiences, so we at the Link Center can learn from you all. So today we're going to be talking about sparking systems change. I've said that several times, and how we can do that with others. We really think that the Link Center partnerships, all of those people you see in that graphic up there on your screen, is a good example of partnerships that are people who are coming together to really incite some systems change. And I just want to highlight some of the things that we've already done to give you some examples and set the framework for the topic. The first one is around 988 call center lived experience questions. And what we mean by that is we have had the opportunity to engage with 988 administrators who oversee the 988 Suicide Lifeline crisis call centers in states. And we've talked to them and shared stories from people with lived experience, how it would be very helpful for call center counselors who receive the calls to have information about callers, to know how best to support them, how they could understand their needs better, while also maintaining anonymity, which is really important in those processes. So to that end, there are a couple call centers on the western part of the United States that are piloting a couple lived experience questions, is what they're calling them. So they're questions that ask things like, what do I need to know about you that would help me better support you? So it really allows people to determine how much they want to share with the counselor in terms of how to support them. So someone may say, I have a crisis plan. That would be helpful to know. Or I receive support in my home. That would be helpful to know. So we're really excited about this and hoping that this goes nationally. The second thing is we've heard a lot from people with lived experience about how transitions from acute hospital settings to community settings can sometimes be complicated, cumbersome. And so what we did is we have formed a focus group that's meeting regularly right now. And it consists of emergency room doctors, nurses, psychiatric pharmacists, to really understand from that side of the story, because there's two sides to every story, what is making these transitions so complicated. So we're really excited about that and hoping to have some ways that we can support transitions for people out of acute settings into community settings, and making them a little more helpful, and less complicated. And then finally, as I said before, for our website, we're constantly vetting resources. We're looking at what's out there, and we're also noticing that there's gaps in resources, especially resources for people with lived experience. We've noticed already that there's gaps related to trauma and crisis resources for people with lived experience. And the partners and folks on the steering committee have developed some resources to fill those gaps. And we'll drop some examples in the chat. But again, this is a place where I want to encourage you all to go up on the website and check out some of the resources that we've developed as well. So I mentioned the steering committee. That's part of the Link Center and the work that they do in guiding our activities at the Link Center. And truly, they are a group of passionate individuals who are constantly informing things like these shared learning groups, like content for shared learning groups, including today's topic. And they're just a really great example of influencing systems from the perspective of people with lived experience. And some of the things that they shared with us about the topic of influencing systems is, from their own collective experiences, that there's a need to educate systems. There's a need to make systems less complicated, especially service systems. There's a need for them to understand how to advocate within different systems. And there's a need to ensure that all, not just some people in a system, feel heard. These people on our steering committee talk about feeling stronger in their mission of creating better access to mental health together. And some folks have even reported that being part of this group has also strengthened their sense of self and what they need. So just a really good example, another good example of a collective impact on systems. And I just wanted to share this last example before I turn it over to my colleagues, but this was shared from one of our steering committee members. Her name's Alicia, and she talks about using art to communicate. And what you see on your screen is an example she shared with us that she used to encourage lawmakers in her state to show the importance of the direct support professionals' role as those lawmakers make decisions about wages. So just another example. Again, all of this to illustrate that one of our goals of the Link Center is to incite systems change in order to ensure that there's better mental health access for people with co-occurring conditions. So now I get to turn it over to my colleagues, Agnes and Barb, who are going to talk more about how we each have a part in changing systems with a focus on storytelling. So Agnes, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Good morning, good afternoon, in whatever time zone you are in. I'm Agnes Adikai, Program Manager for Native Initiatives. And I have my colleague here as well, Barbara Brent, who's also with the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. And today we are going to be talking about creating ripples, stories for change. And we are part of the University Centers for Excellence in Disabilities. There are currently 68 centers across the United States. And our role here at the Sonoran Center is really to help facilitate the flow of disability related information between communities and universities. Next slide, please. And just a short description of me, I am a mid-aged woman with tan dark skin. I am Diné Navajo. I have dark hair with graying streaks in it, and today I'm wearing blue reading glasses and a blue shirt with some beaded jewelry on. When we talk about storytelling, you see here on the screen here is an image of a cloth basket that's both black and red with several cloth dolls that have scars on their head. These are storytelling dolls or worry dolls, and they're used in different Latino cultures, such as Mexico and Guatemala. And the story says that children tell their worries to the dolls before bed, then place them under their pillows, and the dolls take the worries away while they sleep, allowing for a peaceful night's rest. The dolls may also be used as a tool for storytelling by weaving ideas, situations, and people into the story. For Native American communities, we do have story dolls. Many times they're made out of clay. And many times we do have dolls that are made out of corn husks. And sometimes we do have stuffed dolls and animals that we use. And those are passed down to children and with cultural narratives, myths, and teachings. And it's a way to share our knowledge, culture, and traditions. So storytelling really is part of our part of humans, and also as part of our culture. And we tell stories to share values, traditions, experiences, and actions. And I'm going to share with you, if you can see on the screen here, you can barely see it, but this is a teddy bear. I'm holding a brown teddy bear that has a little medal on it. And this was my father's teddy bear. And so when he passed, I kept this as a memento. And when I feel some anxiety or want to share, I start talking to the little teddy bear as though I'm talking to my dad. And so that's one way that I'm able to share stories with someone who's passed. And that is one way that I do share my stories and share my worries. Next slide, please. So for today, we are going to talk about storytelling and change. And to help guide us on our conversation today, we are going to cover 3 things. The first thing is how storytelling can be an effective tool to nurture self-expression, foster self-knowledge, and drive self-determination. Number 2, individual and community storytelling can be used to support people with lived experiences to drive meaningful change. And 3 is storytelling will provide storytelling examples and ideas for sharing one's own lived experiences. And so Barb and I will share some of these examples. And I will actually pass it on to Barb, my colleague, who will talk about what is a system. Barb?
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in, and very early morning if you're from Hawaii. Just by way of a short description, I'm an older woman with very curly black hair, and I'm wearing a white sweater and a dress that my stepdaughter says looks like confetti. I'm very glad to be here today. And one thing that I find interesting about myself that I never knew till I was 50 is that I'm half Latino. I don't know the story of my father and why it was never shared, but it's opened up a world of questions and stories, which I hope to learn more about. So let's talk about what a system is. There's lots of different definitions. I'm pulling my favorite. I'm sure you'll find it very friendly. And I'm going to read from the Oxford Dictionary and see how clear it is, which is like to navigate our systems. The Oxford Dictionary defines systems as a set of things working together as part of a mechanism. according to which something is done. Okay, well, that makes it easy to figure out how to navigate supports and services for people with lived experiences and yourselves as families. So what we've done is try to acknowledge that systems have funding, rules, and regulations. We also recognize that it can be pretty difficult when you're trying to navigate or even apply for two systems. I have a stepdaughter with severe mental illness. That's the term that's used here in Arizona. And we have, as you can imagine, an interesting time trying to get services and supports and understand the forms. And I work in the system. So next slide, please. So, in order to buffer that about the system, because you always hear, well, things would be great if it worked for the people in the system, and the system is inflexible, is to think about that we're all people, we're all members of each other, in the words of John O'Brien. So, we're made up of people, we have our own experiences, hopes, struggles, and accomplishments. So, we'd like to maybe change the definition a little for the purpose of this group and for you to think about whether it fits within your own state and context. So we think of it as a group of individuals, families, advocates, providers, government groups, and the community at large, striving to share resources, knowledge, and power to improve the quality of life for people with disabilities and their families. Also not super short, but it's a vision and definition that we are trying to reach. And next slide, please. So we're talking about storytelling today and how are systems and storytelling related. One of our main messages, and Stephanie talked about that as well as Stacy, is that we have the power to create change. No matter where we are in this thing we call a system, there's a place for us to make a difference. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. I'm sure even governors say, boy, I wish I was allowed to do X. But everybody has that set of limitations, that set of opportunities, but we can make change. That change can be individual growth, and that's something I hope we do all our lives and keep learning and growing and feeling okay about the world and how we fit in it and how we can make it better. It can also be supporting other people on their own journey. I know we have families on the line. I see families I know very well from other states. Nice to see you, that spend their time helping other families and also peer support groups for that as well. Or it could be assisting people with their own support needs and helping them navigate and be self-determined with their own services. Just a few things that we've seen work and some things that have been funded, providing peer support for people with developmental disabilities and mental health support needs might look a little different because there is that intersection of self-advocacy and peer, which is positive and can be a little complex. Joining a committee can really help. I bet many of you are right on committees now, or coming together with people with different perspectives can be really helpful. And it builds on each other's strengths. The stories show that we're all human and those commonalities and find common ground for positive systems change. And when we talk about being on a committee or being part of something, we feel strongly it means being there at the ground level. It's not a policy or a waiver that is already written and you've got 30 days to comment. When we think of it as powerful is when families and people with lived experiences are there at the beginning. And often they're the ones that have come telling their stories that we need to change. Sometimes it's federal regs or state regs, but it's being on the ground level. And next slide, please. So many people that work in government or providers or others, we have a lot of paper. And I was telling Stephanie before we started that this is an online training session and time to be with you. I've printed out about 200 pages of paper. I don't know why. It may be all those years that I worked in government, but I'm working on it. But storytelling has a way to foster change. Again, we've talked about increasing self-understanding and new ways for partners to listen. We use all different kind of jargon, and you already know how exciting it is to use the right words for the mental health, behavioral health system versus the developmental disability system. And sometimes people working in those systems don't understand each other. So from terminology to how you get services to implementing to every piece that there is a system, telling a story makes it real. Telling a story makes it people remember, and it sort of diffuses potential anger in the room. So we hope it's a strong, excuse me, I got something caught in my throat, springboard for systems change. And now let's tell a story for good. Next slide, please. This is Bill, and I'm trying to think about, I talked about Bill yesterday, and I talked to him last night and wanted to know if there's anything he would share differently about that which we talked about a couple weeks ago. And he said no, except for you're supposed to notice all the dolls and stuff behind him. He got them all from his grandmother who lives in Mexico. So that was his major point, saying it's a part of who he is, a very important part of who he is. So Bill, I've known for a long time. He's friendly, he's gregarious, he's outgoing, but he grew up in an area without many services. And I know some of you are from bigger states, but if you've been in Arizona, you know you can drive 11 hours without traffic and still be in Arizona. So there were very few supports for him, and he was hard to understand. He still can be, but sometimes what people were grateful of in his small town is that he was never bullied or made fun of to anybody's knowledge, but he withdrew. The kids didn't understand him. So he became lonely. He became very sad and needed some other counseling and support to think about flipping his limitations that have been called that and with his other labels to see it as a part of who he is. So, you know, this is families, and I know some of you on here exemplify this, and of the people I know, I'm sure there are others, that his mother has very high expectations for Bill and for herself. Bill grew up with high expectations that things were going to be okay and he was going to work really hard. So he started volunteering in middle school, actually in earlier than that, but middle school is when he really felt like he gained his legs. So he volunteered for everything. He volunteered for things he wasn't interested in, not a sports guy. He volunteered for different things that were academic, that weren't maybe in his forte, but he began to be able to feel comfortable with others and build a circle that knew Bill and a circle that Bill could tell his story. What sprang from that was more self-confidence and empathy for others. So he started as a volunteer, and you may have seen him on some webinars, I don't know. People found out he was really good at video recording and math, and that hadn't really come to light before. So he started making videos of other people with lived experiences and their families who wanted to share their story, but didn't want to get up in front of a bunch of people and do that. So those video stories are sometimes used before an individual education program. I'm trying really hard not to use acronyms, so forgive me if that happens, or before an individual plan meeting, to introduce Bill when he feels like that's more comfortable and the person wants to share it, he makes it possible and works the technology for that video to be shared with others. And it's a paid job now. He realized money's good. And now he wants a second job because he's a little bored. And how did he find somewhere to go ahead and be interviewed for a job? Somebody that he knew from his circles. And so with that, stories can bring opportunities. Sometimes they're hard to tell, but it often really makes a difference. And next slide, please. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Agnes, and thank you.
Thank you, Barb, for providing us examples of how stories connect, and to reiterate that our individual stories really begin at birth and ripple through life. So here on the screen, we have a picture of a body of water reflecting some clouds, and the hand and arm of a young person touching the surface of the water, creating ripples. And so just like that picture, we do create ripples that impact ourselves, our people around us, and systems throughout our life. And as Barb mentioned, our personal stories create personal agency, meaning that it creates power. It provides an opportunity to tell our stories and impact, hopefully, how policies and procedures and ways that programming is established for folks with lived experiences. Telling our stories also connects us to another person, as we see in the previous case with Bill in telling the story. It's really important to tell our stories, and it really impacts other people. So I wanted to tell a little bit about my story. As I said earlier, I am Diné Navajo. I grew up on the reservation, which is a rural community in eastern Arizona, very remote. So growing up there, I grew up with a large extended family, grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins. And we had several people in our family who had disabilities, severe physical disabilities that really did limit some of their activities, but really did impact their cultural teachings and the way they helped teach us throughout our life. We had uncles who taught us how to hunt, to drive, to do a lot of cultural activities. And in our community in Navajo, all are respected for their gifts and abilities. And so we have different gifts, as we call it. So with my story, I actually do have some disabilities, cognitive challenges and visual challenges due to a traumatic brain injury from a primary brain tumor. And so I was diagnosed probably about like 25 years ago. And I received treatment, but I still have some afterthoughts, or I guess side effects, sorry, and long-term consequences of a treatment. And then I have balance issues. I suffer from anxiety, sometimes depression, sometimes difficulty in concentrating, and do have vertigo and some other challenges that have impacted my ability to see. And so I use reading glasses and many times have to use devices to see things on the screen when it comes difficult for me. And so working at the University of Arizona, I just plowed through and worked and helped other people. And it was not until when I started working with the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities last year and in creating webinars for our community. And the first webinar I created was on traumatic brain injuries and cognitive difficulties based on my story and my experience. And that was the first time I told and informed a group of folks in the public about my story and some of the challenges I faced and how I've managed and used alternative therapies like meditation, changed my diet, in addition to treatment from medical doctors, how I'm able to adapt and accommodate. And as a result of my story, I've had several people connect with me afterwards by email and by phone and chat and discussing how my story really impacted them because they didn't think they had a disability as well. They were facing some challenges. So it reinforced a lot of thoughts and feelings that people have had. Now, in terms of some of the work I do, I am on a couple of planning committees. One, I am on a planning committee for cancer health education and screenings for women with intellectual and developmental disabilities because of my work as a cancer educator, but as my experiences with some of the trauma I faced in cancer screening. So I'm able to provide some input in the materials that are developed I also sit on research community advisory groups and development of materials and research projects for people with visual challenges. And so I've been able to give back in that aspect where I work with principal investigators, people who lead these studies, to be able to understand perspectives from those with lived experiences. And so I think it was a very opportune time for me to talk about my story and to use my experiences to help education and policy move forward. Next slide, please. So we talked about how stories can be used for personal support and advocacy, and we provide some examples there. It can also be used for planning purposes, ensuring that we have people with lived experiences in our centers, in our organizations, and on our projects to provide input. Here at the Sonoran Center, we do have people with lived experiences on our interprofessional exercise activities for our health professional students. So they have case studies and breakout sessions with people with lived experiences. So this gives them an opportunity to learn about when they're providing health care to individuals, that they respect people's concerns and needs. It also builds trust, and we can also find common ground when working with stories. One of the projects, another project worked on is developing a breast cancer video for the White Mountain Apache tribe, and talking about cancer and some of the challenges, disabilities as a result of women going through cancer treatment, in having a video where we talk about a helper along the way opened up conversations for folks without not directly talking about cancer. So it's a way to identify the community strengths and also, put a spotlight on some of the challenges and needs for our community. Next slide, please. And again, these are ways that we can help improve people to receive services and supports, and we'll have Barb touch upon these points.
Thanks, Agnes. So, as family members, that there are all kind of system touch points. Some of them can be positive, some can be negative, but there's applying, there's intake, there's having a plan. It's finding someone to implement the plan. It's how the plan is going later, or how you want to change the plan. And we have found that storytelling about people's own experiences, both yourselves as family members and for people with lived experiences, has really been a game changer. As her beloved said, we've got to learn to listen. And some successful areas we've seen is states actually holding focus groups with people with lived experience and families. Are they together, or are those two separate groups? Yes, there are some for people with lived experience, some for families, and some in which people are together. They share their stories, and if there's something positive, they share where it worked, but they talk about the negative experiences too, to get to the why. Why doesn't it work? And when you're working across the behavioral health and DD systems, there's probably some more whys. Something is difficult or complex. And next slide, please. So from sharing stories, this is what we found. We have found, as Agnes talked about so well, building trust. Trust is hard. Trust is hard when you're trying to get the right services and supports for your family member. Trust is hard when you're a person with lived experiences trying to find a way that the services are really what you want and need, and express that or not. So we have been able to find ways for someone to walk with someone through intake, whether it's another family member, family to family, or often a volunteer that has walked this road before. It's easier to hear at many times when it isn't the case manager answering the phone or someone else to say, why do I need all this paperwork? How in the world am I going to find something from 8th grade? that gave me this diagnosis. I didn't even go to school then. There was understanding the why they're gathering all this stuff. And it usually comes down to if you want services, you kind of have to go through it so that you can get enrolled in the system and move. And that person that walks with the family and or person with lived experience touches base along the way. Did this get done? How can I help you? Here's another way to do it. We've also seen it very powerfully used in story service planning. So families and people with disabilities can be assisted to share their story, their history, their preferences, and the story they wish to tell, not the story that's in all the charts and in the new computerized systems, but to hear it from the person themselves. And for younger people, or depending on your relationship, along with your family. Uh, some things that we've really seen as powerful is when somebody's made a video story of what they want and what they hope for and what they need for that to happen. And they've sent those video stories ahead of the planning meeting. That's been very successful and interesting. It has built trust and begins a positive and different kind of introduction. And next slide, please. Just briefly, let's talk about Lexi. Lexi is still in school. She's got a few years left, and her difficulty, it was or is, we'll see how things go along her lifetime because we all have those high points and more difficult points. The ideal was not for her to work in a sheltered setting, and that's not the expectation of her family either. But with her being so shy and nervous and having an anxiety disorder, there was a decision that Lexi agreed with and the family felt comfortable with about a stepping stone. And Agnes talks about ripples. This was a ripple. And she started working at St. Vincent's and the thrift store. Yes, she was with some other people with disabilities. No, it's not community integrated employment, but she began to feel comfortable talking with her colleagues, her coworkers, and customers. And she says herself, in her own words, it helped me build confidence, and being able to work was a good thing. She was very nervous about working at all. Over time, she started doing some things with her coworkers and gained more and more experiences. And she's almost assertive now, at least verbally. And she shared that she liked the summer work program and she would like to help others. And by the way, she's going to the University of Arizona. So her story and being willing to tell it and being willing to tell it in different ways, in the way that she wants, helped her to overcome uh, anxiety, at least for now. We know anxiety can ebb and flow, but for her to find ways to find a place in the world. And next slide. So we're almost done with how storytelling helps. We feel strongly about it. So I know we mainly have families on the line, but for people who live experiences, sharing what went well and what didn't can be hard. It can be hard for families too. There's that conundrum, right? To qualify for services, you're told to say everything bad that your loved one can't do. Then you flip into service planning and then you say everything good. And we have people that mentor that explain that. We are going to focus on the positive. You kind of have to go through those what's perceived as deficits to get in the program. But a person sharing what worked and didn't, and their family saying so, can be a little frightening. And I've even heard people talk about fears of retaliation if something wasn't going great. But to hear it in somebody's own voice in a way that works for them might put down the charts, the computers, the laptops, provide eye contact, and to listen. There's also a discussion about reaching new heights and stories for new opportunities, showing what's possible, talking about some of the things you'd like to do based on what you've learned so far. Yeah, there's data. You met that goal, you didn't. This happened in your behavior support program, or it didn't. But being able to share your story, your family story and you together can open up your eyes build self-confidence so that you can ask for what you want and need. And none of us want to do the same thing forever. And none of us want to feel invisible, that we're inside a laptop. So stories bring it to be humans. Some ways that we've seen improving touch points are focus groups, as I mentioned before, funding family to family networks, and there are those in many states. Happily, some of them are able to obtain extra money from the developmental disability system to expand it to help more with intake in other areas. Peer-to-peer information, as you know, is very valuable. It's hard to get it paid for in developmental disabilities compared to that which is available in behavioral health, but we're working on it. And as I said before, there are grant dollars in different states that push out for self-advocacy programs. And as part of that, there are people with lived experience sharing their stories and how you can move ahead and what's worked and wouldn't work for them. It's another opportunity to have the system be nudged along the way. Thank you. And next slide. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Agnes, and I know you'll be very interested in this section, so thank you.
So we did talk about, stories of resilience, and resilience is defined as pretty much adapting to challenges. And we use, the community challenges that people face and the needs that are there, but also some of the positive changes that happen. So storytelling can capture all that. Next slide, please. So this is an example from our Sonoran Center for Excellence. So one of the populations that we work with are Indigenous youth with disabilities. We currently host an annual Indigenous Youth Disabilities Summit, which is virtual. Our last one was on April 12th, 2025. And we partnered with Diversibility Incorporated, a non-profit organization here that focuses on leadership for youth in Arizona with disabilities. And as part of the planning group for the conference, we had several Native youth part of the planning process. They identified the theme, they identified the agenda, speakers, and they also wanted 2 panel sessions that focused on their personal stories. The first panel was Transition Journey to Independence, where they talked about some of the challenges and also successes of navigating going into transition, whether it's employment or life. And the other panel was Intergenerational Impact Stories, where they highlighted people who they considered role models that they emulated or provide them advice or support. And each of their stories was unique, just like how we have a drop of water going into water, depending upon how heavy or light it is. And it creates ripples, and these ripples join and make waves because of the strength that they have of their stories. And so due to these 5 individuals, as seen on the screen, 5 Indigenous Native youth and their stories, the service providers, clinicians, and those online got a better understanding and perspective of the successes and challenges of being a Native student with disabilities. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about why stories matter, we talk about stories that are universal. Stories help us understand our place in the world. Stories help us learn how to act wisely. Stories help shape our perspective of the world. Stories help us understand other people and their perspectives. And stories pass down knowledge and morals. And so these are just some of the key points of why stories matter. Next slide, please. So storytelling also creates community. For here at the Sonoran Center, we work alongside people with disabilities. We have several people who've lived experiences working here to provide programming and leading some of our activities, such as our community advisory board, our peer-to-peer advisors, our social media, are out sending information out and creating team building within our community. So our team as a whole here, we create a community teams also in general have a vision and purpose of the organization, and those are stories of why we exist. And some of these stories created can also influence fundraising, advocacy, and partnerships. We tell our story, why we exist, why we exist is important, and how we help people. So again, storytelling for an organization really, comes together and creates unique patterns. But also because of that, we also honor stories during intake, programming, and research. Barb had shared some of the examples of how during intake, many times people will tell their stories. During programming, we have people with lived experience and guide some of our activities, and in other organizations, they do similar. And in research, being a person with lived experience on a research panel or helping guide research is really important, because we provide those questions, those bits of information that make consent forms more reader friendly, more interactive, being able to understand it a little bit more. Some of the questions, reviewing those, we may think that they might be inappropriate, or there's better ways to ask questions. And so it's really important to include people with lived experiences. It's also a way that stories to help people tell their stories. We also need to coach people and to provide information on how people can tell their stories. It's many of our stories are very personal, and it takes quite a while to be able to build trust, build confidence, and be able to feel comfortable telling your story. It took me almost 20 years to really tell my story, because I felt like it would impact my employability, and people look at me differently. But after telling my story, it was really not the case. We also need to think about what platforms there are where people can share their stories and foster a sense of belonging. An example, the administrations of community livings have a stories of disability employment journeys, where they talk about the challenges and successes of finding employment. So there's a link there on the screen. Next slide, please. So next slide talks about Jerry, who was hit by a drunk driver at age 18, resulting in traumatic brain injury. They went to rehab, but stayed with their parents because of their traumatic brain injury and rehabilitation. They became lonely, bored, and depressed. Of course, counseling was always recommended for people who have a traumatic brain injury, and many times they don't provide the tools for action, and sometimes you get tired of talking. I, for one, did not like support groups, because it was just a lot of talking, and I want to do something. So I really felt close to what Jerry's experiences were. And so Jerry went to the counselor and saw some flyers for a peer-to-peer group. He joined and started sharing his story. And because he was really good at sharing his story, Jerry was chosen to go to Washington, D.C. to take part in a National Traumatic Brain Injury Conference as a speaker. And because of that experience, it really turned a light on for him, where he knew he can help peers, and how peers can help him. So again, this is an example where telling a story can move forward into action and finding what your path may be. Next slide, please. Another story we have is a colleague of mine by the name of Alicia Manuel. She was a CNN Hero nominated for her work with a Native foster youth. And in her tagline of her story, they stated that Manuel's journey from prospective parent to becoming an auntie to hundreds of foster children started with a tiny baby, a borrowed car seat, and a onesie. And this tagline really hooks you into what her story is. And she became a foster mom to a young infant, and had to scramble to find resources, and found that there were a need for more Native foster parents, and there are a lot of Native foster children in the system. And so because of her experience, she made it her mission to tell her story, and also to create a nonprofit organization and advocate on behalf of Native youth. So again, it connected her story to other foster youth stories. And it also created data. So she started documenting how many Native foster youth were that were not receiving services. So this is an example of how storytelling can be used as a tool for change. Next slide, please. And we talk about stories as visuals, videos, but we also can create stories that are written forms. And so here are 3 examples from our Sonoran Center. And these are planning guides that are like workbooks, like journals that people can use to identify what their interests are for future wishes, for future planning. And in creating such documents, we really need to decide on why we want to create stories, who our audience is, allow people to listen and share their stories, to be patient, because as I said, people may be uncomfortable sharing their story. And also a really good action is to really provide examples of stories so they can hear how others have shared their stories, and helping learning or teaching others how to create their own stories, and making sure there's a flat platform to share those stories, and to remember that stories can be written, can be journals, poems, and workbooks. And stories are just like waves, audio waves that impact people. So next slide, please. So the Sonoran Center also has another example of storytelling. We did a storytelling project documenting stories of positive parenting for our pregnancy and parenting support project. So it's to, again, it's a collaboration between multiple disability parents aimed to gain information about the needs, preferences, and experiences of individuals with a disability in their decision-making, healthcare, and support to become a pregnant and parent of a child. So this is a link to their story if you so wish to see. Next slide, please. And so the last 2 examples are just examples of digital storytelling. So I've worked in the College of Public Health and have documented and have utilized and trained community members how to share their stories on injury prevention programs, seatbelt safety, on community gardens. So we work with folks to create their own stories, identify what story they want to tell, write it down, practice, record it, and then also utilize pictures or images and put it together through free software. Usually it's iMovie if you use a Mac, or any kind of movie making software that's free on IBM computers. Next slide, please. And so these digital stories are co-created and are useful to tell stories where we become the technical assistants, and folks with lived experiences or from community members are the authors and directors that drive the content. And so it is storyteller led and owned. And next slide, please. And these are just examples of how to create stories. So people with, phones such as iPhones, Androids, you can go onto social media and create stories via Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. If you like print material, you can use Canva, which is a free online graphic design tool to create documents that have a lot of templates to use. And then you can also record on StoryCorps. So StoryCorps, a while back, had a mobile van that they went and across the US and documented stories were on various projects. So one of them is the Disability Visibility Project, an online community dedicated to creating, sharing, and amplifying disability media and culture. So there is a link to that. So I want to thank you for allowing us to share with you about storytelling, how it can be used for systems change on an individual, an organization, and also maybe on a national level, how you can possibly use it as people with lived experiences to share your story. Your stories are powerful and can impact people. It can impact yourself and impact systems as well. So next slide, please. And I will pass it on to my colleagues who will be facilitating a group exercise. So Max and Wendy will be helping you on the next section of this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I am Max. I am a presenter here. I work for an organization called Green Mountain Self Advocates, and I'm outreach director. And for visual purposes, for a description, I am a Black man in my late 30s, 39 to be exact. I have short black hair. I am wearing a white collar dress shirt with light thin blue stripes, with a black tie. And I also have like just the link center background just behind me. So before we get started with our group exercise, I'll just take a moment and let Wendy introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Max. Hello, everybody. I'm Wendy Morris. I work for the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors, or NASHPD. I'm delighted to be here today. I am an older woman with long gray hair, which I have down today. I'm wearing glasses, and I have on a green sleeveless shirt. And Max, I'm going to turn it back over to you, but no, we can't hear you very well. So I don't know if you can move closer to the mic or adjust your volume. But I'll turn it over to you.
How's that?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I adjusted my volume, and if there's any thing about my sound, you just feel free to let me know. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is we are going to do a group exercise, and what I am going to have you do as the audience is first, I will read the scenario with the situation. Then your job as audience members is to come up with ways to solve the problem or the issue within the scenario that I'm going to read. And how that's going to work is you will see, of course, a scenario up on your screen, but also questions that you will see too that I will also ask. And again, if you have an answer, put it in the chat. Or if you feel comfortable, feel free to put yourself like off mute and just say what it is aloud that way. And I am aware that sometimes at the end of these, some of you may still be, thinking before we move on. And so I'll treat it like once we get toward the end of our session here, I'll treat it like if there's last second things that the audience says, it's kind of like those last bit of kernels in the popcorn machine after you unplug it that still have not popped yet, but they will pop. So that's how I go about things. If there's anything once we are wrapping up with our session that you still want to say, I will make sure that I catch the last bit of the popped kernels after I unplug the machine, if that makes any sense. Figure of speech, you know how I am, or at least if you do. Anyway, so without further ado, here we go with the group exercise. And again, feel free to take yourself off mute or put your answers in the chat. Alrighty. So Raul is 32 years old and has been attending a clubhouse in the city that focuses on people with mental health support needs. These are activities like cooking. There are activities like cooking, art classes, budgeting, and bingo. Raul very much likes to go to the clubhouse for something to do and to be around other people when his family is at work or doing their own thing. Raul also has autism and feels that the staff and members do not understand him, and the other people who drop in who also have a cognitive disability. For example, he gets overstimulated easily, especially when there are a lot of people at the clubhouse and it becomes noisy. This is when Raul will have trouble talking to other people because he is distracted, or he will go off by himself and rock. He is usually a social guy and engaged in the activity, so others seem confused by this. So, our question to you is now, as a family member, how can you encourage Raul to share his story to spark change for others at the clubhouse to understand people with co-occurring conditions? And who else could Raul partner with to spark change? All righty, so I got some people already in the chat. First, I see one from Jen Fisher, and she says, Raul could share his story with the group in a video, or he could create an about me to share with the group. He can also ask for accommodations at the center so he could fully participate. Raul could partner with a family member, friend, or self-advocacy group.
All kinds of great ideas there, right?
Yep.
It's wonderful.
Dorothea Daniels says in the chat, maybe an opportunity to educate staff on sensory needs, what it can look like, and how others can help.
It's a great idea, having something like a sensory cabinet or materials that people can borrow at the center.
Yeah. Ashia Llewellyn, if I got your name right, Asia Llewellyn, sorry. She says, we can ask Raul to share about how he copes, parentheses, rocking or stimming, and why that helps. He could make a video or a visual storyboard. Working with his clubhouse friends could be good for all.
I love the idea of a storyboard, right? Maybe that's something they could do in the art class. Maybe other people can make storyboards as well. That's a great one.
Yep. Let's see. I got another one from Jean Farr. And she says in the chat, he could share what his experience is when he feels overstimulated and what works with him.
Yeah, maybe they could find some alternatives, right? If he's vocal about that.
Dorothea Daniels said again, he could partner with the other folks who frequent the center and what their needs are and how they cope. They can create a presentation to educate others who may not be aware.
Great. Again, I love how many people are suggesting that he collaborate with other people who come to the club, peers.
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer Ledeni says, yes, we had something like this at our Boys and Girls Club in Columbus. We also had like a group discussion pointing how fidgeting was similar to stimming to help other kids understand the needs.
Nice.
Carol Costello says in the chat, maybe a family member or friend come once with him to help explain how he feels at times.
That's great. And then Andrea has shared an About Me one-page profile.
Oh,
And she has a link there, and then I think further down, somebody said, yes, that's exactly what I was talking about. So there is a link there for folks who are joining us live to access.
Yeah. And Jen Fisher is acknowledging Andrea. Andrea, that is what I am talking about.
Yeah.
Asia Llewellyn, life course tools are really good. And Asia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. Andrea Widwer says they really are. Life course tools and materials are available for download and printing at www.lifecoursetools.com. Okay, I'll check that
Looks
out.
like we've got a few fans of the life course tools. So that's great.
Jen Fisher says the life course is really important. And there are many places that offer the training. And Maria Crowley is acknowledging those are great ideas. Anybody else? Anybody else? How to encourage Rural to share his story?
And I wonder for all the folks who are really touting the life course, is there any specific anything in there specific that could help him write a story or tell his story? Anything other than what's already been mentioned?
Yeah, Wendy, this is Andrea Whitwer, and there are a lot of great supported decision-making tools and other pieces. I think the about me would be like a good first place to start, but then there's like a service and support like star that he could potentially work and maybe fill out with others that talk about what are the supports around them and some of those other pieces that might kind of fit in nicely with that. It looks like Barb might have some other ideas as well.
Yes.
Go ahead, Barb. Go ahead.
Thank you, Andrea.
Well, trying to get off mute. Did it. Feel good about myself. People talk about life course. A lot of the states that are on this line that are raising it were part of the community of practice for supporting people across the lifespan, which is a joint project of NASDS, the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disability Services, and also University of Missouri, Kansas City. Together, about 22 states joined this community of practice and began to experiment, explore, and change some of the tools. And what we've always thought about is that if you just use the tools, it's just the tools. It is like a person-centered plan where sometimes it comes to life and other times it's something pretty with graphics that doesn't get implemented. So it really is a framework, and would encourage you to learn some about the framework, and then the tools click. They make more sense, and they also can make a real difference. And I think you probably heard me, without saying those words, talk about some of that through some of the things that I've mentioned. So anyway, that's a little bit about the life course, and we're pretty excited. It's been 12 years since it officially launched, and it's going strong. It's going out to different people now, different people. It's being used with elders, people with primary behavior support needs, people in foster care, and we've loved to see the growth. So thanks.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you. Let's see. I got more in chat. Thank you, Barb. I got more in chat. Janet Schaus says, Raul could partner with the clubhouse staff to create a smaller setting for quieter conversations, maybe?
Yeah, so now we're shifting maybe to some suggestions of how he could give himself some space, or that the clubhouse could create a space for him and probably others. I'm sure, we talked about this yesterday, Max, is we all get overwhelmed at time, right? I certainly do. I'm not a big fan of being in big crowds, so it's nice to have a place to escape to, as it were.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I know that at conferences that I've been to, and even like at my local like self-advocacy meetings that I have, we first at the conferences conferences I've been to, they provide like a room where people can go and just be in a quiet place to sort of like get away from everything if they feel like overwhelmed or need to like stimulate. And also too, I'm part of a local advocacy group up here in Vermont, and we just, if somebody's having like, an overwhelming time, we just let them like have their space to do that and
Yeah,
just
so
understand that
important.
yeah.
Yeah, I love the conference. Our conference at Nashville has a place like that for the staff because it's very, very busy, right? So a place where we can go and kind of regroup and catch our breath. Oh,
Yeah,
we've got somebody who's come up. Oh, that's the interpreter.
it's just the interpreters.
Yeah.
Laura Vegas has like a website in there. It's like tlcpcp.com. She says also a great resource for one-page profiles. Also like another one, supportsofamilies.org. She put in as well. Andrea Whitwer put in a website too and says, yes, I see some people from Ohio. Here is the FRNO link that also has the link to our charting, the life course program at Ohio State, Ohio SGate or whatever. I think it's Ohio State. And she put frno.org. Alicia, oh, great. Asia or Asia. Oh, I lost you. Asia Llewellyn. Raul may need noise canceling headphones to help in the times that space gets noisy. The center may want to offer a sensory safe space or offer the headphones.
Yeah.
And Laura Vegas says the supportsofamilies.org is the website for the community of practice for supporting families Barb mentioned.
And I love these ideas, a place to decompress or headphones. In a way, so he may need to tell his story to get some of those things happening at the center to help the staff and other people understand why some of that's important. But great suggestions.
Anybody else? And again, I know that, the popcorn machine is on, but I am aware that sometimes those kernels that have not popped yet sometimes will pop once I unplug the machine. So.
And while we're waiting, Max, I'll say, it's been interesting. You and I have done a lot of these shared learning group, these exercises together. And so frequently we have a very different set of recommendations from families and people with lived experience than we do maybe from the clinical professionals and direct support workers. But there's been a lot of common themes through all of our shared learning groups so far, which I think is really interesting, but great because there's so many good ideas. I will say this is the first group that's had very specific, like the life course tool, like this is how you can accomplish it. This is a tool you can use. So again, that shared learning, that back and forth with the audience is fantastic. And we thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Janet Shao says Raul might Janet Shao says Raul might want to connect with others with cognitive disabilities and create a panel to share their stories.
Nice.
I just wanted to jump in. This is Jean Farr.
Hey, Jean.
Hey, I just wanted to mention how powerful this is in terms of the, the impact of sharing. I mean, we're doing shared learning groups, and the impact of sharing our stories and how incredibly powerful that is in terms of fostering our own sense of community, our own sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And when, right, not being alone in our need to be quiet or have a quiet, safe space. I think the themes through the storytelling and through everything that we do in these shared learning groups, to me, it's incredibly powerful how it's so reinforcing the community and how we all grow from seeing ourselves in others and being able to contribute to the dialogue. So I just wanted to thank everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jean. And Max, it looks like we have one last comment where Janet says the not being alone is so important. So that's beautiful. Maybe a good place to end.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I want to thank everybody for giving us great answers. And on that note, I will turn it over to Maria. Maria, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. Thank you. If we could go to the next slide. I love the popcorn analogy, Max. It makes me hear and smell popcorn as we're wrapping things up today. And it also, if I'm honest, makes me a little bit hungry. We so appreciate all of you for being here today and for the outstanding discussion. Please continue to put those last kernels of information and resources in the chat as we're wrapping things up. And it helps us to develop materials and really inform us about where you go to for information about sparking systems change and building partnerships. Next slide. This is the schedule in front of you of the past shared learning groups that we have hosted. You can find recordings and transcripts and material from past events on the Link Center website. You can find and register for upcoming shared learning groups on the website as well. And as you can see, the next topic is posted here for you, which will be importance of relationships. That'll be in October. By the way, I'm Maria Crowley with the National Association of State Head Injury Administrators. I always forget to introduce myself. And just as a quick visual reference, I have wavy silver hair and I'm wearing a pale blue shirt and some reading glasses, and I have the Link Center logo behind me. Next slide. You can visit the Link Center's website at any time. The address and the link are here on the screen, and that's dropped in the chat for you as well. And you can email the Link Center if you wish with any questions or suggestions. Next slide. We do have a very quick evaluation that we hope you'll complete for us. On the screen in front of you is a QR code that you can also scan with your phone. We will also put a link in the chat for the evaluation as well. And just as a third option, it'll pop up when we close out today, and it'll be sent to everyone as an email option too. Your feedback is really important to us as we continue to make improvements and adjustments for future shared learning groups and webinars and products. And then as our last slide, we just want to thank you once more for participating with us, and we want to issue a very special thank you to our colleagues Agnes Atakai and Barbara Brent at the Sonoran Center for sharing their work. We would also like to thank the members of the Link Center's Steering Committee for their time and their valuable input for our shared learning groups. They have incredible impact on advocating and creating change in communities and across systems. We could not do what we do without them. Thank you also to the Administration for Community Living. And lastly, thank you to all our partners for contributing the preparation and the content of this particular meeting and all the meetings that we host. That's all we have. Thanks again and have a great afternoon.